Mankind has a long history, but it is one full of poorly thought-out solutions. War being the ultimate bad response, but it is a path often taken. Mankind has never been short of solutions, even if they are bad ones. What we are short of is something we can fix. Despite the multiplicity of solutions tried, they all share the same problem. They are all part of the system we are trying to fix. We are trying to fix a system that generates its fixes. The solutions provided are modifications of what we call the Nimrodian system. This system is reliant. If it was not, it would not have lasted. The solutions devised fix nothing. They merely modify what exists without altering anything fundamental. Nimrodians live by the law of the jungle, which is expressed in the proposition, might makes right, and the end justifies the means. Consequently, that which exists ought to exist by virtue of its ability to exist. Or, expressed another way, existence justifies itself. However, acting, as many do, in a way that imperils their own existence brings into focus the problematical nature of Nimrodism. It takes the application of force to overcome a threat, but it also takes a competition to justify one's own existence. This trial by combat by which existence is justified contains its own risk, not the least of which is annihilation if the combatants are nuclear powers. The application of force to combat a threat can mean anything from an arrest to an all-out nuclear holocaust. From bullies to gangs to armies, the same basic approach is used in every threatening situation. This carries over to the market, which is a competition for resources and control over property. This is the system we are in and from which we develop our approaches to dealing with its problems. They all come down to some application of force, whether this is taxing Peter to fund Paul's entitlements or declaring a group racist to justify treating another group as if they were victims. Yet, when the nagging, pleading, reasoning, and threats fail us, we know we are left with no recourse but to declare war or resort to some other form of violence. We might argue that the free market is the solution to all of our problems. That is the struggle between supply and demand. But when the struggle becomes too great and decays into a war to control crucial scarce resources, when do we ask if perhaps we are trying to fix the wrong system? If the solution always has the potential to usher in violence, when do we realize the system is the problem? When do we understand, not that resorting to violence perpetuates the problem, but the system we are in requires we be willing to resort to violence as a price of survival? If violence is what we resort to, why expect others not to resort to violence as well? What we need to understand is that the Nimrodian system is based on a lie. Saints who ought to know better not only adopt the mode of dealing with problems, but when we respond with violence, we adopt the lies of this world also. Every injustice hides a lie. Every crime is justified by a lie. The lie makes the use of power justified. Criminals are people who make things right in the most horrendous ways, but their actions are predicated on a lie. Every inequality is grounded in a lie. There are no disparities of power without lies. There are only two options. No matter what we face, in the end we pay our own way or we freeload off of others. If we take the latter option, we end up being a thief and a liar. There is no way for this not to be true. The Nimrodian system is nothing more than a multi-leveling marketing scam on an unimaginable scale. Some call it globalism, but the result is the same. A concentration of power that permits those at the top to own and control everything. In this system, you get power to the degree you can shift power up to those on the rungs above you. This MLM is not about the ones at the top getting rich. It is taking power from those below you and transferring it to those who are above you on the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is composed of people who will do anything to justify living off of the avails of others and more, who will stop at nothing to strip everyone below them of every scrap of power. The a priorian system is an expression of the rights of dominion. We own what we create and make no claim to anything created by others. This is our definition of honesty. Honesty, when implemented or practiced, produces equality. Imagine a community composed of persons who work, earn a wage, and pay for everything they receive. What use is a state to them? What will it do for them, and what will it cost? How would a bureaucracy be financed if there was no way to force anyone to pay for anything they did not see a benefit in? If everyone was equal to the point of there being total honesty, there would be no crime. There could not be any crime if there were no dishonest people. Without the state, there is no way to transfer things with value without the consent of the owner to someone else. without at least face-to-face direct confrontation, which could easily be dealt with. All social problems would vanish overnight simply by implementing the right of dominion and subsequently eliminating the state. The question to ask is not how do we eliminate problems, the question is how do we stop free riders from justifying parasitic activity? Eliminate the parasite and the problems they cause are gone with them. But this answer is problematical because the system we are in is predicated on there being parasites. It is indeed an environment for parasites. There is data that suggests that since 2000, there's been an 8% increase in students and teachers in government-funded schools. There has also been a 37% increase in principals and assistant principals. During this same period, there was an 88% increase in administrative staff. This means the educational system has become an entrenched jobs program for adults, a way for the state to reduce unemployment, if not increase productivity. But why has unemployment become such a scary topic that the state engages in make-work jobs that ultimately only makes the economy function even worse? A priori creates a cash-based economy. However, our cash is based on productivity, not assets. Our cash represents equity, not assets. Cash is created when work is done. Equity-based currency insulates income from the predation of the state and other bad actors. Cannot work evil on holy ground. Nor can we purify ourselves in the lands of the devil. Satan offered just the kingdoms of the world, which Jesus rejected. Yet here we are. The basics summarized. We are all born infants and dependents. We are all born physically immature. For many years we consume what we are given with only the smallest capacity to contribute to our own upkeep. At some point we become physically mature. But physical ability does not mean that the individual will start to pull their own weight. Some people refuse to work at all. Others do not want to do anything productive. They look for ways to earn an income without engaging in productive labor. This is possible because this system is parasitic. It was not designed specifically to scam people, but it is unavoidable to have multi-level marketing and not scam participants. How does a system survive and prosper when it produces nothing? The wealth must come from somewhere. But we must try and dig deeper. For there is a sharp line dividing the person who adds value and the one who does not. The line is logical and analytical, but absolute and fundamental. If the person does not add value, he or she remains a dependent, but as an adult that could and should be accountable for their costs, the person is rightfully considered a parasite or freeloader. George Orwell got it right. He was in his way, more insightful than any writer or philosopher. Society is like a farm and labor akin to a domesticated beast. We did not end up on this farm by choice. We have little or no say in who the farmer is. We are bought and sold and traded by the owners in a process we do not understand. Society is not a cooperative. It is a tyranny. The citizen is given no choice in if he or she will participate or not. Not is the relationship between state and citizen anything like an equitable one. Governments do nothing, absolutely nothing. What they do no one would pay for or subsidize if they had any choice in the matter. They redistribute wealth. That is it. Everything is done by the working person. All wealth is created by labor. We do not all pay taxes. Of those who do pay taxes, not all those who pay taxes pay anything close to their share. Even if they do pay taxes, it does not matter. The payment of taxes is one of the most irrelevant activities that happens in a developed society. Taxation is a secondary level of wealth. It is not real wealth. Money is a derived and second-tier layer of wealth and an illusion of wealth. The only real wealth is actual labor. If your nation lost its labor, everyone else would die. Taxes are therefore totally irrelevant. What matters is if the taxpayer is contributing actual labor to the community. If the person is not working and producing real tangible goods and services people buy because they want to, the person would disappear and the economy would improve as a result. Society is a tyranny designed to extract wealth from labor and transfer it up the tiers of society to the highest echelons. Society is an extractive industry, extracting real wealth from labor to subsidize and benefit the upper levels. There are two kingdoms, the kingdoms of labor and the kingdom of the parasite. The state sits astride them, extracting wealth from the former to give existence to the latter. Every nation does what is needed to produce prosperity. The difference is not in what the nation does, so much as in what it does not do. The rate of capital accumulation is inversely proportional to his rate of non-labor subsidization. We know consumption is not compatible with investing. One must do one or the other with capital, but the existence of parasites is the consumption of capital. Parasites as non-productive elements are incompatible with a prosperous economy. That is obvious, or ought to be. Parasites are not compatible with labor. It is not that this Nimrodian system has parasites. It is grounded on power disparities. The Nimrodian system is predicated on there being a pyramidal structure in which those at the top have more wealth and power than those at the bottom. The problem is, this is created by a self-reinforcing cycle. The greater the power disparity, the more power that can be accumulated at the top. If there are power disparities, there is dishonesty. There is no legitimate reason for power disparities to exist. There is no logical reason for inequality to exist. The only reason there would be a power disparity is that one person does not wish to provide fair value for what he or she is being given. Thus, the rationale for the power disparity will always be a lie. We work and get paid for what we do. This is equality, and it is the root of honesty. If we do not receive full payment for the work we do, we are part of a dishonest system. However, we do not understand this system, which is a market system. It means there are buyers and sellers, and they each decide what they will buy, and what they will sell, and what the top price is for purchases, and the bottom line for sales. This makes each person an independent agent making his or her own choices. That is the gist of the market system. We need an alternative to the market system, regardless of whether this is the free or command market. We need an alternative to a system in which the market decides the price. If the market decides the value, then everything is potentially marketable at a price determined by its supply and what others are able and willing to pay. A slave only has value if there are persons with the funds willing to buy the slave. Supply can only respond to demand if there are persons able to provide the supply. In other words, the demand/supply equation is inelastic if the money supply relative to the goods and services in question is inelastic. When people with money will not finance an operation, it means the project cannot happen, regardless of its merits outside of the mechanisms of the market. The market is not friendly to intentional communities or communities in general. Indeed, it is fair to say the market does not support community. Community has low value to a market that has no demand for humanity other than what it produces through labor. The market certainly places no value on what IC is attempting to do, regardless of the merit of the community outside of the market's supply/demand equation. For example, an IC may have trouble getting a loan, not because the project lacks merit in a community sense, but because it lacks profitability from the market's perspective. A ministry is created to care for the members. When someone produces something of value for the ministry reciprocates. When someone avails themselves of the services of the ministry, the benefit is recorded as a debit to the member's account. This way equality and honesty is maintained. Markets must give way to ministry because the market relationship which turns everyone into an economic animal is perverse and cannot be anything but what it is, and that is not natural, logical, or moral. It is corrupt. The a priori ministry system must prevail.